Alright, if you've been following me on Twitter, you know that I've been trying to get myself back into the publishing side of Star Wars content. A few months ago, I started reading Charles Soule's The Rise of Kylo Ren, and now I'm currently reading his Star Wars comic run as well as Greg Pak's Darth Vader run. But I've also been trying to sit down and catch up on some longer form publishing content, starting with Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice. I'm really loving it so far, and hopefully I'll have a review out on that in the next couple weeks. All of this is in preparation for the upcoming Lucasfilm publishing initiative, The High Republic. Originally teased as Project Luminous, The High Republic is the next era of Star Wars storytelling in publishing, with 5 phenomenal authors spearheading the production of these books and comics. The High Republic was initially announced back in February, with the announcement video you're seeing play out on screen right now. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about what we know of the High Republic, where I think it's going, and what I think of the concept as a whole. As I mentioned, the High Republic was officially announced back in February and scheduled to begin next month with Light of the Jedi, a novel by Charles Soule. This was supposed to be a big lead into Star Wars Celebration this year, but due to the current state of the world, the convention was canceled and the publishing dates for the books and comics were pushed to January of next year. The High Republic has been advertised as a new era of Star Wars content set 200 years prior to The Phantom Menace. The basis of the idea behind this era is this line from Obi-Wan Kenobi.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
While the stories are going to cover a vast range of characters from smugglers to bounty hunters and more, the true focus of this era is going to be on the Jedi and their status in the galaxy. The Jedi of this era have been described as the Jedi Knights of the Round Table, pulling from Arthurian legend and truly showcasing the Jedi as peacekeepers. As we know from the prequels, the Jedi Order that we see leading up to the rise of the Empire is not perfect, and they have fallen far from the pedestal they once stood proudly upon. The Jedi that we find here align much more with the idealistic Jedi Knight. The state of the galaxy is also far different from where we find it in The Phantom Menace and the rest of the prequel trilogy. The Republic still holds control, but there has been very little expansion past the mid-rim of the galaxy. The infamous Outer Rim, where many planets from the films are located, including Tatooine, Scarif, Geonosis, Bespin, Hoth, and Lothal, have not yet been explored. There have been settlers from the core worlds in the Mid-Rim beginning to explore these worlds, with the Jedi serving as a Texas Ranger type, patrolling these worlds and exploring new territories that Star Wars fans are already very familiar with. That brings us to the central conflict of this era, something called the Great Disaster. It has been kept mostly under wraps so far, but a few weeks ago we got our first sneak peek at the events leading up to it. An excerpt from Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule was released, and we read about a cargo vessel called the Legacy Run that is transporting new settlers to the Outer Rim. But during travel in hyperspace, the ship is destroyed, rather mysteriously, causing fragments of the vessel to fly out of hyperspace at destructive speeds. According to Charles Soule, these deadly missiles of debris can appear anywhere at any time, from the Outer Rim to the core. In this moment of crisis, the Republic turns to the guardians of peace and justice, the Jedi. Soule also said that the opening beats of the novel depict an epic disaster and a heroic, thrilling response by both the Republic and the Jedi to save lives and end the crisis. It's just the beginning, though. The Legacy Run disaster kicks off a much larger story. It really is just one piece of a much bigger saga. What could have caused this? Well, I'm going to assume it has something to do with the Nihil. The Nihil have been described as space Vikings who plunder and take whatever they please, most likely in the Outer Rim territories, where crime and cartels still run wild in the time of the Skywalker saga. But, do the Nihil have the power or ability to cause such a disaster, or are they simply reaping the benefits of a larger, more mysterious threat to the Jedi and the Republic? Personally, I think that there could be something more nefarious at work. We know that while the Sith have been believed to be destroyed for 1,000 years when we get to the Phantom Menace, we know that there have always been at least 2 hiding in the shadows. It will be interesting to see if the Sith are explored in any fashion in the publishing. As for content that we will be getting, I mentioned earlier that there are 5 authors spearheading production on this era, in partnership with the Lucasfilm Story Group, as well as many other employees of Lucasfilm and its publishing partners. These authors are Charles Soule, Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Older, Justina Ireland, and Kevan Scott. I've talked at length about Soule's first novel In a Galaxy Far, Far Away, but what about the others? Well, Claudia Gray will be bringing her talents back for another young adult novel titled Into the Dark, which will be published by Disney Lucasfilm Press. Justina Ireland will be writing a middle grade novel titled A Test of Courage, also from Disney Lucasfilm Press. Daniel Jose Older will be moving to comics after writing the novel Last Shot, as he'll be taking on Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures comic from IDW Publishing. And last but not least, Cavan Scott will be writing the main Star Wars: The High Republic comic series. The authors mentioned this in the video, but I am so excited that this new era of content will be explored from all different types of publishing and made for audiences of all ages. That is what Star Wars is about, after all. Finally, let's talk a little about my thoughts regarding this era and what I think it means for Star Wars moving forward. I'm very excited about a new era of Star Wars content. I absolutely adore mythology, particularly Arthurian legend, so to hear that this era of storytelling is a direct inspiration for the High Republic is a perfect fit for me. I've always pictured the idealistic Jedi as this knight in shining armor type figure, and as I've discussed on Twitter, the closest thing we've gotten to that is Qui-Gon Jinn, so to see more of that will be great for me. I also think that this type of power for the Jedi can be very dangerous. It has already been teased that the Jedi have found a sense of contentment with the absence of the Sith for so long, almost to the point where they have begun to ease back on combat training and began to live a life of lavish glamour and ease. Their ornate clothing and lightsabers highlight this. These Jedi are not dressed for combat, they're dressed for show. While I don't view an ideal Jedi as a full-blown warrior, this type of acceptance and enjoyment of peace and serenity can be quickly shaken by a rude awakening, one that I think will come with the Great Disaster. As a result, I believe that the Jedi will be unprepared for the Nile or how to deal with the ramifications of the Great Disaster. They'll be rusty in a sense, and as a result, perhaps over-prepare and focus too heavily on their combat, leading to their eventual state of fault in the Phantom Menace. Now, all of this is speculation, and you won't find me surprised that the Jedi we meet in the High Republic are, in a sense, perfect. But that doesn't create a good story, and I believe we will find the Jedi become too comfortable, and as I said, will be shaken greatly and changed for the better or for worse by the events that are to come. I think that this era is a very interesting choice as well. Clearly, Lucasfilm wants to explore other areas outside of the Skywalker saga, and I think they want to reserve the Old Republic for film. This leaves room for a different type of story closer to the films that is exclusive for publishing, or at least we think. I am not yet entirely convinced that this new era of Star Wars is exclusively made for publishing. That may be what Lucasfilm has said before, but it was no coincidence that the first book was scheduled to release just a few days before Star Wars Celebration this year. I fully expected the announcement of a Disney Plus show or movie revolving around this era. I believe the original intention was to have Benioff and Weiss, the showrunners on Game of Thrones, to usher in a new trilogy of films focused on the Old Republic, thousands of years prior to the films. But now, since they are no longer working on those, I think that the Old Republic has once again fallen to the back burner of Star Wars content. I would not be shocked if Rian Johnson's trilogy takes place during the High Republic. Rian had such a great grasp on the Force and the meanings behind it in The Last Jedi, and while many people have issues with how he handled characters, I think the way that he handled the Force was just perfect, and he would be a great filmmaker to begin telling cinematic stories in an era full of Jedi. I believe the other films in development from Taika Waititi, Kevin Feige, and others will take place somewhere in the Skywalker saga timeframe, but all of that remains to be seen. Regardless, I'm very excited to see this new era of Star Wars content unfold as we begin to explore the Jedi, the Force, and the galaxy in a brand new way, starting in January. But that's all from me today. What do you think about the High Republic? Are you excited for this new era of Star Wars content? What are your predictions for the stories? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at SeanTalksSW. I post daily news, discussions, and more. Links in the description for all of that. Thanks again for watching, and may the Force be with you.